During this session, we will look at one specific case study that is emblematic of the changes technology innovators are facing and coming up against, and how they are breaking down the legacy walls. 7S Bio's Chief Business Officer, Stuart Blitz, is focused on transforming how blood is collected and will share how his company is confronting growth in an industry that is completely built around old technology. I think you all have a lot to learn from this. Thanks.
Thanks.
That clicker's up there.
Okay. Super. Okay, let's make sure I know what I'm doing here. Oh, perfect. Hi, everybody. My name is Stuart Blitz, and I'm the Chief Business Officer of 7Sense. And I want to talk a little bit about, so what if your product is better? So how many in the room have ever had your blood drawn by a phlebotomist? Okay, most people here. By fingerstick testing, I'm sure probably just the same number of people. What's kind of amazing is this is how blood is drawn today in 2017. They literally stick a long needle into your vein. They have to have somebody there, a skilled person, do that. Still not a really great process. I mean, you hear people all the time that it's really inconvenient. They have to go somewhere to a central lab facility to get their blood drawn. They have to wait in line. You know, I remember going at times and, you know, for whatever I had to get a checkup, and you don't know whether you're going to be there for 15 minutes or for 60 minutes. Really inconvenient. Make sure. Yep. And you can see your blood. You actually see it being collected. You know, it's just amazing that in 2017 this is still how blood's collected, given all the other advances in technology. Sorry, I think there's a delay when I click it. There we go. So if you don't want to get your blood drawn by phlebotomists, some tests and point-of-care tests and other types of testing, you can do fingerstick testing. People think, well, that's great, I can do it myself. I'd argue that it's actually more painful and actually really a less pleasant experience than going to a phlebotomist. It's really painful. I mean, do a fingerstick on your fingertip. It's one of the most sensitive areas of your body. Really painful, you know, and especially if you're doing getting a labs done or getting enough blood out of there to do a typical lab test. Really, you will definitely remember that, and it will hurt for several days. And if you have to cook afterwards or something, really, really terrible. So what we've done as a company, and I can tell you, kind of explain our product a little bit. Sorry. So what we've done is we've said we are going to revolutionize the blood collection market. So there are many, many, many companies out there doing all sorts of new diagnostic tests, smaller blood volume, more panels. I'm sure you've read about a lot of them. We are revolutionizing the blood collection market with a product called TAP. And I'm actually going to do a demo on myself here on stage, but it is a fast, painless way to draw blood. So no more tubes, no more thick needles, no more finger sticks. It's a way that totally changes how blood is collected. So this is a demo being done on me a few months ago. So what we've developed is this product TAP. And so what it is as you can see, is a little sort of pod that you will place on your upper arm. I'll place on my upper arm, and I will press a button. That's it. And so how it works is that the device is actually made under vacuum pressure, and so when you press that button, you have a ring of very fine needles go into your skin, quickly out, and then you wait a couple of minutes, and the blood's collected. So I'm actually going to do a demo on stage as I talk, so people can see how easy it is. So basically, I take it like this. I stick it to my arm, okay, and press a button. Totally painless. And so now I just wait. And so you can imagine the implications for a product like this. So today, you know, when you're going to get your blood work done, the typical process is you go to your doctor. Doctor says, great, I need you to have a lipid panel done. I need you to have whatever, you know, CBC done. Great, go down the hall. There'll be a lab down the hall. More than likely, it's owned by either Quest or LabCorp. They're the two biggest labs, about half the US market. And that's what you'll do. But if you can imagine this type of product here, you could do it in the doctor's office. You could do it at home. And so that's what we're striving to get to in the future, is actually have this be a product where you can actually do this yourself at home. So if you could imagine totally changing the centralized model for blood collection and moving to a very, very different state. So I think I've kind of set up, our product. I've talked about what we do and why it's better. But now I want to talk a little bit more about, well, it's obviously better than getting a needle in your vein. You don't have to go to, into a lab. All these benefits. Why shouldn't people adopt this, in a nanosecond? Well, I'll give you a couple of good examples, and I'll give you a couple of things that we're thinking about how to grow into this market. And we have great partners, So if you look at the lab market in the U.S., I said it's dominated by two big labs, Quest and LabCorp. LabCorp's one of our investors, great partner. They love what we're doing, and is eventually going to help them. But half of the market is basically run by Quest and LabCorp. They have big collection, diagnostic centers that do all the testing that are physically set up to take tubes. So they have all this infrastructure that's sitting there in all across the country, both those companies, that are automated to take tubes. So it's a really difficult problem, because Quest and LabCorp can say, this is great, this is way better, my patients will love it better, cost profile works, but how do I fit your pod into that machine? Well, obviously you can do it. Oh, by the way, I finished collecting at some point a while ago. So, so how do you fit our product into those cylinders? Well, you don't. I mean, look, very openly, that's, we're not going to change the way that millions upon millions of blood samples are collected every day in this country and around the world overnight. We can't. The labs are not going to change their infrastructure overnight. So what choices do we have? How do we, it's a much better product. What are we going to do to help kind of grow this category and to replace it? I mean, look, our goal as a company is, look, we want TAP to be the new standard in blood collection. So we don't want to see any tubes there. We want to see TAPs. That's what we want to see. So where do we start? So there are a number of channels in the market right now that we can start with. So we don't need to go and actually use TAP for several million tests a day, first of all, and second of all, we can't because the labs aren't set up to take it. So if people ever seen dry blood spot testing, there's all sorts of wellness panels people are doing. And so today, the process for those is you might get a kit in the mail, or you might do this at your employer, but basically you will do a finger stick, a really painful finger stick on your fingertip, and then you'll drop blood samples into these different areas. And there's many different types of cards. Well, that's a very, very natural application for this product. You can imagine, well, having a dry blood card is easy, but getting blood under the card really challenging. That's what we do really well. So we're saying, hey, what are the channels out there that use these cards? Let's use TAP for that. Very, very natural channel, very, very natural immediate patient benefit. And there's all sorts of channels for this. Corporate wellness, there's all sorts of companies that are, especially if you look at like the self-insured self-insured market, companies want to know, hey, how are my employees doing? I want to do a wellness screen on them. I want to know, are they actually staying healthy? Because I'm paying for them. So, I want to make sure that they're healthy. And if they're not, I want to know about it now so I can get some intervention and help them. So TAP's a very, very clear, advantage in that market. There are a lot of new direct-to-consumer test companies that are launching. There's plenty out there. There's Everlywell, there's WellnessFX, there's Thriva, it's a company in the UK. There's a ton of them. They're all sort of going after the lab market by saying, don't go into your lab, don't have to go to your doctor's office, just come online, buy a kit from me, and I will send you a kit at home. You take your blood, send it in. So all those companies, we're talking to all of them because they're like, oh my God, if you could give me this product that we can use in a home test kit, you've made the patient experience, multiple orders of magnitude better. So that's another channel we're going to go after because, if you have to take hundreds of microliters of blood from your fingertip in a test kit, that's really not a great experience. It's really funny when I talk to all the direct-to-consumer test companies out there, they're all, and I say this joking, they're all semi-embarrassed by how they have to collect blood. Because you ask them, you say, that's a great service, amazing, you have all these customers, how do you collect the blood? And their volume goes down a little bit, and they're like, yeah, and they kind of look down, and they're like, yeah, we gotta have them do a finger stick at home. Or even worse, we have to send them into a central lab to do a blood draw, which defeats the whole purpose of ordering a test from your home. So another clear channel for us to go into. Everybody heard of 23andMe or some of the sort of the DNA testing that's happening these days? Everybody here's heard about them? Well, that whole sort of explosion of genomics testing on the consumer side, pretty much all of those tests are done by a spit tube. So how that market has evolved is people have said, okay, well, I want to send a kit to your home, get some genomic data from you. I'm going to have you use a spit tube. Not great, not optimal if you ever use one of these things. It's, it's a little bit annoying. You have to spit, you have to fill spit to a certain level in the tube. The only reason why they use spit is there really hasn't been up until now a easy way to collect a blood sample at home and get it back. So all the companies are doing this say, wow, I'd much rather have this product. Blood is actually better to use for that type of testing than spit. Spit's okay, and it's people kind of use it as a backup, but they'd much rather have blood, and they'd much rather do it in a way like this. So this is another channel, and when we look at it, the tubes that I showed on the slide previously, if everybody knows the market, they're a product called Vacutainer. That's most of the market by BD. There really isn't a sort of Vacutainer type of dominant player in that space. TAP could become sort of the Vacutainer, the standard in the genomic space. And that category is just in the infancy, starting to grow. So we think that's a really big opportunity for TAP. It's a great front end for that. So if you want to have any of those testing done, both at home or in your doctor's office, and you're going to see a lot more of that testing being done, ordered over the coming years, TAP is a great product for that. Look at retail. So, we think retail is a really, really interesting, great opportunity. So I'm sure everybody here has heard about Theranos and what they're trying to do at retail. I'm not going to talk about that in too much detail because I think everybody kind of has seen all the press about it. But I think that they were really, really right about where the market is headed much earlier than anybody else. And so they said, look, people don't want to have to go to a lab and get their blood tested and get their blood drawn for a blood test. They're already in a CVS or a Walgreens or a Safeway multiple times a week. Why can't we do it there? This is a great product for that environment as well too, because you can imagine you simply go into a Minute Clinic or to a Safeway or any of these retail locations and get your blood drawn. And and all of the retailers are looking at ways to do that. You look right now, Safeway, mostly out here on the West Coast, they're working with Quest in a number of different centers. I mean, that's a number of different metropolitan areas. CVS, they're going to see, I think I've heard the number, like 10 million patients in their Minute Clinics this year. Huge. I mean, that's going to be one of the largest, probably the largest, effectively primary care facility in the country. And so they'd be foolish not to say, hey, what other services can I provide? Walgreens, same boat. They're probably going to be a little bit slower to it just because they have to sort of, make sure they don't jump in too quickly again like they did with Theranos. I'm just guessing. That's another, in our mind, great market for this product. If you think about it too, retail, they want you to feel good about coming into a CVS or a Safeway or a Walgreens. They don't want you to have this sort of feeling like, wow, that's where I get a needle stabbed into my arm, or that's where I get my finger pricked and it hurts for days afterwards, because I don't want to do that anymore. They don't want that. They want to have a much better patient experience. Sorry. Athletic testing is another one. So we got invited back this winter to an initial blood draw for the U.S. men's soccer team. So through one of the companies we're working with. Great idea, right? We talked to the medical staff of the U.S. soccer team, right? And it was a great eye-opening learning experience because they were like, listen, blood testing is great. He's like, I want to do more of it. And so he said, but the problem is that you can imagine you have this, I'm a soccer fan, so I hope they're going to be elite in the next World Cup, but this elite team that we have to spend 3 hours doing a sort of team blood draw. You can imagine that the coaching staff probably lets him do that once a year at most, and he probably has to beg for it. But if he could actually, team sitting around having dinner, they could pop one of these onto people, tap, 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 pull it off, and he could actually do a lot more performance testing more regularly. Athletic market's a really interesting market for us because, again, not a market that lends itself to phlebotomy and needing to do that or wanting to do that. Much better product for that category, and again, it's not millions upon millions of tests per day. So, we see all these channels, and I wanted to share a quote. If people know somebody named D.A. Wallach, he's a really interesting, I've gotten to know him over the last couple of years, really interesting thought leader in where healthcare is headed. And, he's always been saying that. He said, look at what rich people do and what they want out of their healthcare. And that's going to subsidize the future of everybody else. And I think he's really, really right, because there are countless examples of this in other categories too. And I just think it's a really interesting quote, because I think it's something that we need to think about. Yes, for sure, we want to have a product that will be reimbursed and will be, this will be the new way blood's drawn for the 330 million people in the U.S., of course, but we can't do that overnight. And so if we can start with people that are rich and they spend money on healthcare and they spend money on better experience, it's only going to help us for the future. So I think it's just an interesting quote that he's had. And I think once you do all that, so kind of what's the point of all this? I think when we go into all these different categories and we look a year, 2 years out, and we're getting blood collected in all these various categories, and probably more than I even thought about to list, we're going to start seeing patients and doctors and providers start kind of clamoring to say, wait a second, I want to use this and not tubes. I want this to be. And so I think when we have that that push from patients and from providers and from doctors and from the market, that's only going to help us to sort of this groundswell to then begin to change the infrastructure of the system in this country for drawing people's blood. But that's not going to happen overnight, right? Most people don't even know about this product, let alone are demanding that this is how their blood can be drawn. But I think that's what we have to do. We have to do it like that. We can't change the infrastructure of this country overnight. So, and I just think I look to other examples of how this has happened in other industries. I mean, Uber is the great example I thought about when I read DA's quote. I mean, I don't know if people remember this. When they started out only doing Uber Black. Okay? And I remember a friend of mine was visiting Boston one time, and he was like, I'm going to call an Uber. And I'm like, are you out of your mind spending $50 to take a three-mile car ride? I was like, I'm too cheap for that. I'm not going to spend $50. But they started getting people in the habit of doing that from your phone, getting a car delivered that way. Of course, what happened next? UberX, and making the price point more affordable, and that's what they did. And the same with Airbnb basically said, look, I got to start small. I'm going to start and do it in one city. And then how they get more exposure. People know the story. This is an aside. They got the most exposure in the early years when they went to the Democratic National Convention when Obama first was getting elected. And they were basically demonstrated that in this city of Denver, they could actually expand the housing pool for people that want housing because they had a hotel shortage. So my point is you have to start small. You're not going to be able to change the entire market overnight. So you have to start in areas where you can win easily and then get people to realize how great a product that you have and why it should be the new standard. So with that, thank you very much.